Sorry for the interruption. Actually, I was confirming because there must be some snag. I was unable to see many of you. So I thought like I was confirming whether you're watching me or not. Because this is a page, I think bifurcated from the original page. So I think the comments are not directly appearing here. No problem. I'm sorry. I beg your pardon. I welcome you back on my channel. I'm Dr. Mukesh Pareek, and those who are first time watching me can subscribe to my channel. I take the name of my channel. It is English for Net JRF by Mukesh Pareek. I am Dr. Mukesh Pareek, and to see quality videos, to understand literature in the true sense, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. I repeat its name. Its name is English for Net JRF by Mukesh Pareek. And you can also visit my website mukeshpareek.com, and you can contact me for further PDFs, for study material, for PPTs. So directly I come to the points which I left in the prior part of this video. So friends, there are many things which are to be considered in pre-romanticism. I hope the term romanticism is clear to all of you now. That romanticism, I don't want to repeat it now, that romanticism word has come from the word Roman. Roman means new, and romanticism as such means someone who talks in a sense which is not practical up to an extent. That is why it is a movement against classical movement or neoclassicism. And before I go further, I would also like to add that if you read T.S. Eliot, you will find that he was against romantic writers. He was against the definition of Wordsworth's poetry, spontaneous emotions recollected in tranquility. So this is just to make you aware, like, how you can connect that, romantic age, is sandwiched between two ages, Victorian age, which came after it, and neoclassical age, which, preceded it. So in this age of romantic and pre-romantic, even I would like to tell you that directly romantic age did not come. Before that, there are 4 or 5 writers which are important from net point of view. For example, William Collins, James Thomson, Thomas Gray, William Cooper. 4 writers are important. You find them always in any net exam. If you just open any paper, and you will find that they have been major poems of these writers. So before I directly come to Wordsworth and Coleridge, I will not come. I will be restricting myself in this live video, in this live class, to pre-romanticism, a general term applied by modern literary historians to a number of developments in late 18th century culture that are thought to have prepared the ground for romanticism in its full sense. In various ways, these are all departure from the orderly framework of neoclassicism and its authorized genres. I ask all my students who are already admission in Cosmos, they can open to their PPTs, so they can directly understand what I'm reading from the PPTs in between. And before I go to PPT, I will also ask you that those who are new here and those who are watching me first, what is the right way to study for net? In between, I'll be just digressing and taking your attention. First of all, you suppose somebody who is watching me first time and he wants to study for net JRF. So what should be his beginning? Because teachers, you can go to teachers for hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. I've been famous in my area for taking longer classes. We keep reading almost all the grand texts in the class. Sometimes we read the whole play of line by line, word for word, all the texts of Shakespeare, all the longer poems. Even I teach the whole poem in class. For example, the like Christabel, like all the greater poems of Coleridge. For example, this Ancient Mariner and all. Before that, I would like to ask you that what kind of material you study. I mostly go to these kind of materials. Might be it's opposite, can't you can't see it, but I can read it for you. That there are certain smaller, booklets or kind of smaller books from Oxford. Okay, and there are certain series. I have almost all the books of this series. Almost all. I can't show you all. But you can see in the background the big library. The same kind of library I have at institute, at in the other rooms also. These books can clear a basic idea of particular thing which is not available in all the books of history of English literature. So you can go for particular books like that, where you will find that a particular term, for example, Puritanism. Suppose you want to study like Puritanism, then these kind of from Oxford, there are a very short introduction series are there. They are available online, and you can give your orders from those online bookshops, and you can avail to that. And the first and the foremost hurdle to most of the students, Indian students particularly, is vocabulary. So you can improve your vocabulary by, suppose you don't understand a particular line, you can write down the word, consult the word in dictionary, and then you can go, and then only you will be able to find that you can go to become a professor of English literature. Okay, so this I'm guiding also, fulfilling the duty of a teacher. Apart from that, once you have purchased these kind of books, you can have these kind of books also. The books of critics, like right now in my hand I have a book, The Romantic Imagination. This is also from Oxford, Maurice Bora. We had a question in net about this book also. In this book there are certain sections. I would like to read contents for your comfort and for your better understanding. The first chapter's name is The Romantic Imagination. Second is Songs of Innocence and Experience from Blake. Then The Ancient Mariner, The Ode on Intimations of Immortality by Wordsworth, Prometheus Unbound by Shelley, Ode on Aggression Urn by Keats, Don Juan by Byron, Edgar Allan Poe, American writer. He falls in the category of dark romanticism. I don't want to digress, but write down in your copies. You also have a term dark romanticism. We have a word romanticism. You must have heard the word romanticism. You also know about pre-romanticism. Pre-romanticism is also called preter-romanticism. And there is another term, dark romanticism, that is related to Gothic. And if you go to internet, you will find this term there. And so The House of Life by Rossetti, Atlanta in Caledon, Christina Rossetti, The Romantic Achievement. So all these contents, if you read them, if you read this kind of book, I think you will have a better understanding, which you mostly don't get, because the history of English literature books, they give us an outline of certain poems. They give us their understanding of those poems or the works or the novels written in the Romantic age. But sometimes I feel that that is again create a kind of paucity, a kind of dearth. The students of English literature, they want to improve their knowledge. I have never seen anybody. Yesterday I got a call from Bihar, and that boy was asking me that I was so much glad to see the kind of content in your video on your YouTube channel, and I was surprised, like can somebody give you that much content also? So I'm not praising myself, but I'm simply saying that yes, content is very important for all of us, because when we solve a paper of net, and when we go to the another paper of net, and we find that suppose we have scored good in first paper, and the second paper they have given us questions from nowhere. So don't get smug and chauvinistic, and be a kind of self-satisfied person while you are reading. You should go to purchase different kind of books, particularly for criticism in a particular age, that will enhance your ideas. और मैं तो हूँ ही आप लोगों के लिए. You can directly contact me. I will be giving lectures. So directly I'm coming to all the points now after reading the definition of Romanticism. Second point is the most important constituents of pre-Romanticism are: number one, Sturm and Drang phase of German literature. Friends, Romanticism first came in Germany and from Germany it came to France and England. So the phrase in Germany is called Strum and Drang movement, and for that I have already written a kind of PPT. I'll clear it out also in the next live class. Second point is the primitivism of Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Primitivism mean to say that Rousseau, who was a French philosopher, he talked about that the primitivism means when we were barbarians, when we were uncivilized people, that state was good. So that was another point of pre-romanticism. Third was oceanism. Many students ask me, like, what is oceanism? Oceanism is related to, you can understand simply, a kind of cult of poetry in Irish literature or Ireland. And in pre-romanticism, that oceanic bards or the poets of poets, those ancient poets were restudied, and Macpherson's name is famous in this particular sense. And in pre-romanticism, he's also, this oceanism is also studied. Oceanism spelling is Ossianism. Next point is the cult of sensibility in the sentimental novel. In pre-romanticism, we see that different writers are starting writing novels, and in those novels they started creating sensitive, oversensitive characters. Dekhiye, I would like to add here something, that actually what happens, like the movies of Bollywood movies of 1970s, they had very emotional dialogues. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, एक मूवी में वो कह रहा है कि तेरे पास गाड़ी है, मेरे पास गाड़ी है, बैंक बैलेंस है, तेरे पास क्या है? तो वो आंसर इज, मेरे पास माँ है. Now, there was an age that the whole generation was attracted, lured, and became ecstatic on this dialogue. But today we see that in all the comedy shows, this dialogue is made fun of. ये बात इसलिए कही जा रही है, why I'm pinpointing this particular point, that all the things which occurred in pre-romantic age was later on considered, they were criticized, they were considered like, they were not good. Okay, so there were kind of novels which were they were showing over sentimental characters. Sentimental mean to say they wanted to show that emotional human being is better than a human being of science or a human being of logic or reason. I hope you understand. So in pre-romantic literature, they were against logic, and the classical period is, or neoclassical period is, based on logic. Okay. Then the taste for the sublime and the picturesque in landscape. Friends, it will take a lot much time to make you understand, but I would like to add 2 or 3 points here. That taste for the sublime. Sublime is a very important word before we enter into the whole world of romantic literature. Sublime means a kind of height of emotions, and along with fear. Like when we are on a cliff, suppose we are standing, on a cliff, and we look down, we will feel very scared. But if you analyze that scariness in you, that feeling is considered to be generating a kind of pleasure. Okay, so romantic poets, pre-romantic painters, all these people, they moved towards this thing also. They started encashing that particular emotion also in human beings. So this is also a part of romantic and pre-romantic literature. So and we call it sublime. And the picturesque in landscape. Picturesque is a word. There are many books regarding picturesque. Picturesque means something which is creating a scenic beauty, landscape, gardening, mountains, hills. And there was a fashion of taking grand tour. Those who are preparing seriously, they must be knowing that all these romantic writers, they used to go to grand tours with their friends to Switzerland, to Geneva, to Germany. Geneva is in Germany itself. And why? Because by going towards these very dangerous landscapes, they satisfied that sense of awe, sublimity in them, and then that sense came into their literature also. So picturesqueness, and you must have seen that Those who don't understand picturesqueness, I can define it in a very simple words. The word has come from the word picture. Okay, so suppose you see that you have read the poem, Shelley's poem Mont Blanc. In Mont Blanc, he has created two things. One is picturesqueness, another one is sublimity. So these two things are very important, and as I told you that it will take a lot much time for me to make you understand this point. So I'll be reading a particular PPT on this in the coming few minutes. Next point in romantic and pre-romantic writing is the sensationalism of the early Gothic novels. Sensations, which I was unable to give particular word a few moments back when I was talking about sublimity. That we have some sensations, किसी चीज को देख के we got scared. So that sensationalism. You all have visited your ancestral houses. In my village, I have 2 or 3 big havelis, and when I go there, in childhood, particularly, we used to get a bit, fearsome of that. We would never go inside because that would create a kind of sensation, and that sensation is related to willing suspension of disbelief, a theory propounded by Coleridge. Okay, so in romantic and pre-romantic literature, that sensationalism is also encased, and they write about that also. And next point is the melancholy of the English graveyard poetry. So one who is seriously preparing for net exam should point after point after point, can go to all these points, and can really prepare himself or herself for this exam. And in graveyard poetry, we have many different writers. Most famous one is Edward Young and Lady Winchelsea and Thomas Gray, of course, Thomas Gray. And next point is the revival of interest in the old ballads and romances. Friends, being nostalgic and talking about one's historical ancestry, or say one who takes pride, James, there are many names coming to my mind, but Scott's name is primary when we talk about the revival of the interest into the past and old ballads. All these writers have they reinvented by looking at the old ballads. Ballad क्या होता है? Ballad is a kind of poem, a long narrative poem actually, in which the writer is saying a story. Okay, and everywhere in the world, in the oral tradition, we had different kinds of like in Haryana you have this name of Lakshmi. नाम याद नहीं आ रहा है मुझे. In every culture we have people, old people of say 80 years ago or 100 years ago, suppose you go there, people used to narrate, they used to visit, they were peripatetic in their approach, moving from one to another villages and telling the histories of the past, in through their songs and their ballads, so which was a fashion throughout the world actually. And luckily I got a chance in my childhood, looking at these kind of people when I was in my village, I think for summer vacation, and I found some people came, and the whole village gathered somewhere near Chopal, and that person, they had a very peculiar voice, very loud voice, and with their particular Ravan Hatta, we call it, a kind of handmade local kind of violin. They used to sing on that, and I don't remember exactly because it was in Marwadi, but I understand that they were telling about either Rani Padmavati, and all these the past of Rajasthan. So that thing was famous in England also, and the local villages, in the dialect, in their dialects, there were certain singers, who used to tell about the past. Those ballads were rewritten, okay, and so that created a sense of pride in them, that we had a culture in. So romanticism is related to this particular peculiar aspect also. Apart from that, there was Methodism in English church. Friends, I teach you live for Puritanism also, and for Unitarianism also. And because we have started this live class to understand Romanticism, and it is very important for us that Romantic writers somewhere talked about equality. They talked about the possibilities of individual. They believed in the imagination, and they believed in democracy, because when you talk about individual, when you believe in individual, you talk that you talk that there is possibility of creating a system also in the society. So why I have touched this topic while I'm talking about Methodism. Methodism is a kind of Christianity started by Wesley brothers in England, where they were simply asking one question, that this culture in England, that on Sunday you have to wear best of your dress, and then you go to church, and there from the post of a priest is a government post there. It is appointed, that person is appointed from government, and then he delivers his sermon there. You have to attend that. And a person who is university educated delivering a lecture, it will be very tough for a labor class person to attend and understand Bible and the sermon out of Bible. So Wesley brothers, what they did, they said that why can't we make the language of Bible easy? Here I would also like to draw your attention that already made easy in its language, 17th century by James, King James, and that version is called Authorized Version. Everybody is aware about that. But after that, there were other versions also, but the language was still the language of the aristocratic people, or the language who was understood by all the people who were educated. What about the language which is used in the villages? I was watching a video and I came to know that suppose we go to England today, you will be surprised that you won't be able to understand every second person out there, because they speak or they have certain words from different dialects, and it is very tough for a common man to understand the words from that dialect. For example, the Welsh dialect, it's very tough for you to understand. Even I can't understand that. I can't claim. The Scottish dialects are very different. The Irish dialects are very different. So we cannot say that this whole English is a uniform language. So how can somebody say that, if some priest is delivering a lecture and that person can understand that lecture easily? It means Wesley brothers, they simplified the language. They started going into the fields. They started their congregation. Their congregation means they asked all the labor class to come there. No need to wash your clothes. No need to put on good clothes. We'll be delivering the sermon of Bible in simple language. So that is also, that dragged us towards Romanticism in the positive sense, because it somewhere diminished the need for standard phrases, which we call later, Wordsworth called it poetic diction. It means simplification of language. Simplification of language also takes us towards democracy, because someone who can understand. Suppose I'm speaking very easy language right now. I'm not using any jargon. I'm very selective when I deliver lecture to my students. I don't use jargon. Jargon means very technical language. And that technical language, suppose I use, it will become more, tougher for my students to understand. So, because these videos these live classes are meant for a common student to understand things properly. So, I was talking about Methodism. That Methodism is a movement in religion, Christianity, where Wesley brothers simplified the language. There is a depth in this sense, but I'm simply asking you to understand this from this point of view, because in our net I've seen this question twice. Those who are first time watching me, I must tell you that I have cleared net 14 times and JRF 3 times, and I'm double MPhil. Why I'm talking about my qualifications right now? I'm simply saying that I have been throughout last 20 years improving this brain, uh, not to impress people, but to impress myself, that can I understand things there, because I am embedded in India. I'm a Hindu. My sensibilities are the sensibilities of a Hindu. How can I understand Christianity? I'm not a Christian. But then you, if you are an educated person, you should be open from all the sides so that you can receive ideas. So I'm asking you, I'm imploring you, that you should all behave in a sensible manner and study things so that you can understand all these things. And no harm in improving your language, no harm in improving your education. So friends, I hope this Methodism is clear to you. Next comes the most important part, which is clear to almost every student, that is French Revolution. That we cannot talk about romantic writers or pre-romantic writers without French Revolution. Now, French Revolution means liberty, equality, and fraternity. Okay. So I can't say that, with this half-minute lecture, we can conclude that, what was the impact of French Revolution on the romantic or pre-romantic writers. Because revolution does not come in one day. It takes, years. It means in France, the atrocities of the aristocratic class was, it was looming large for last many centuries. And there were certain movements, there were certain writers. German and French people are the most studious person I have come across in my life, friends. You must have seen that, most of the time, whenever Nobel Prizes are declared, you see that either French person is winning them or say German people are winning them. Why? Because they read a lot. They are attracted towards ideas. So French Revolution really made human being, particularly the sensitive writers, to think about the clutches human being is in, the clutches of society, the clutches of the mental, ideas, tradition, language, grammar, So this Romanticism, with this, when it was successful in 1789, when it came in France, the writers in England and all the other countries, they started feeling, even in India also, they started feeling that, yeah, we can break these clutches, these mind-forged manacles. Okay. So French Revolution created a niche in the poetry, in the novels of the writers, where they were talking about anti-slavery, they were talking about the equality of human beings, where they were talking, when they talk about equality of human beings, talking about that through language, because you should not forget that we are students of literature, and our everything should be related to literature, and literature is the wordsmithy's art of word. Through word he creates art. But art had been the property of the bourgeois, the upper class. This Romanticism, they took this from the upper middle class and aristocratic class, and they said that these things, which are considered to be like the poems, the novels, why they be written, always be written in all the tough language? They can be simplified even. And why we create only the kings and queens and princes in our novels? We can create lives of people, and that is visible when we see that the country elegy written in country churchyard. We see that this writer is talking about the common people of village who are I think they have no identity, and he's giving them identity by writing about them, and he's creating that parallel kind of, he's juxtaposing in every stanza the upper class people with these the proletariat class, the riffraff people, the hoi polloi of our society, the people who are no one. Okay. So French Revolution had impact Romanticism in this sense, that they gave a kind of liberty for the writers to create characters from the lower stratum of society. Then these developments seem to have helped to give a new importance to subjective and spontaneous individual feeling. Now this subjective feeling is very, very important, because in classical age or neoclassical poetry, we see that what you think is not important, what you feel is not important. You have to bind yourself to certain rules. Rules are important, you are not. But these romantic writers say that no, I'm important, rules are not important. If I feel good, rules will follow me. So subjectivity, individualism, all these things are important, when we talk about. And that's why I think they're talking about their own individualism. They are talking about what they feel, their subjectivity. In the very starting of the video, I said that these writers, I talked about T.S. Eliot. That T.S. Eliot said in his famous essay Tradition and Individual Talent, that these romantic writers, romanticism is not good. I would like to quote here Goethe. Goethe has said that romanticism is a disease and classicism is life. These kind of things are altogether, inverted. And these writers, romantic writers, they said that romanticism is life and classicism is disease. Okay, so now it's time for me to read something from the other PPTs. I would also like to add here that when we talk about romanticism, as I enumerated the 13 points, I would like to reread them for you, those who joined me later. That most important constituents of romanticism are Strum and German literature, the primitivism of Jean-Jacques Rousseau, Oceanism, cult of sensibility in the sentimental novel, the taste for the sublime and the picturesque in landscape, the sensationalism of the early Gothic novels, the melancholy of English graveyard poetry. Melancholic, that is a very important aspect of all these writers. Then the revival of interest in the old ballads and romances, Methodism, subjectivity, and spontaneous individual feelings. So if you see all these things, you will find that all the romantic writers have used all these things. Now I would like to read some things which are important for you. What happened actually? What are the philosophical backgrounds of cult of sensibility and all? Friends, this age of enlightenment, when we study romanticism, we cannot save ourselves from the philosophical movements. Philosophical movements actually make writers write something. I hope you understand my point. Some philosophy comes, philosophers are a kind of thinkers, and they are antennae of society. Although this line is I'm twisting from my point of view, actually this great writer of modern age, T.S. Eliot, dedicated his wasteland. Ezra Pound said this, that artists are the antennae of society. Antennae of society. In English, the plural of antenna is antennae. So you can understand why I'm linking it with that. Artists are the people. Fashion trickles down to us after some time. First of all, artists create fashion. In the same sense, philosophers and artists, they have a sense of looking at things, which make them very special, and their sense of looking at things make them right, and to alert the people later on. Okay, so the philosophical movements are important. These philosophical movements of enlightenment, and this age of enlightenment in which there was a philosophy. It came from different writers from France and Germany. I will make a special video on that, and from there you can understand it. This is not the right time to discuss this. So, but enlightenment is very important. Enlightenment talks about logic, rationality, reasoning. That means you put your reasoning, and then you can understand things. And these romantic writers are against these reasonings. They say that reasoning cannot make us see, make us understand things which are not visible. There are other things also which our mind cannot perceive. There are many other things in which our imagination can perceive. That the concept of primary and secondary imagination propounded by St. Coleridge, where he says that primary imagination, but secondary imagination is only with the writers. So age of enlightenment was important as a contrasting phase to understand romantic literature. And then there are other things also. I would like to talk about Henry Mackenzie, who wrote The Man of Feeling, a sentimental novel, which was very important in the romantic age. Talk about sublime. Like to talk about Edmund Burke's, you can write it, a philosophy. His book is very famous, A Philosophical Inquiry into the Origin of Our Ideas of the Sublime and Beautiful. This is a landmark treatise, a landmark book on the sublime. Sublime क्या होता है? What is sublime? In literature refers to use of language and description that excites thoughts and emotions beyond ordinary experience. Though often associated with grandeur, the sublime may, grandeur means something beyond our level, grand. Sublime may also refer to the grotesque or other extraordinary experience that takes us beyond ourselves. We feel, sometimes we say, we become ecstatic. That feeling is called sublime. And Edmund Burke talks about in this book, I reread the name of the book, A Philosophical Inquiry into the Origin of Our Ideas of the Sublime and Beautiful. Book was published in 1757, and that book was a landmark. Burke defines sublime as, I read, whatever is fitted in any sort or excite the ideas of pain and danger. So earlier I said in the same class that the feeling of danger, the awe, A-W-E, awe, whatever is in any sort of terror, feeling भी कभी आप करके देखिए, हमें मजा आता है. We feel, we enjoy that particular moment, जब झूला ऊपर जा रहा है या हम लिफ्ट से नीचे आ रहे हैं. Those who have joined me just now, I would like to ask you that you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. It is English JRF by Mukesh Pareek. You can also visit my website mukeshpareek.com. The name of our institute is English Cosmos. So there is another website, englishcosmos.org. Why I'm asking you to visit, because on these websites I have a blog, and I keep giving you many quiz to solve. I'm going to give you a quiz today to solve on my blog, and I have prepared a video on romanticism. I'm talking about all these things there, and you can visit, you can subscribe to my channel, and then you can see that video on romanticism there. So I read again Burke's definition. Burke, we call it Burke. Burke defines the sublime as whatever is fitted in any sort to excite the ideas of pain, danger, whatever is in any sort terrible or is conversant about terrible objects, or operates in a manner analogous to terror. Analogous means equivalent to terror. Find and believed that the sublime was something that could provoke terror in the audience, or terror and pain were the strongest of emotions. However, he also believed there was an inherent pleasure in this emotion. As Burke said that when we feel terrible, pain, danger, we feel a kind of pain. Pleasure. Anything that is great, infinite, great, like a mountain, a great mountain, infinite, like ocean, or obscure. Could be obscure means something which we can't understand. Suppose we manifest a ghost. Ghost, could be an object of terror and sublime, for there was an element of the unknown about them. So in the very simplest word, I would like to draw your attention that romantic literature is also a kind of literature where they moved through the Gothic literature, to the literature of supernaturalism. They want to know something which is unknown to us, so they want to. The logic says there is no ghost. Medical science says there is no ghost. but you all know that we have heard anecdotes and stories about ghosts. So there are some emotions which create a kind of pleasure. We all like to watch these horror movies and all. So this is a very important point. Christabel, when we read, very important to understand that we cannot understand Ancient Mariner, we cannot understand Christabel until we understand the concept of supernaturalism, and in supernaturalism there is a concept of sublime. So to understand all these things, we need to understand Edmund Burke's book, Philosophical Inquiry into the Origin of Our Ideas of the Sublime and Beautiful. Burke said that anything that is great, infinite, or obscure could be an object of terror and the sublime, for there was an element of the unknown about them. Burke finds more than a few instances of terror and the sublime in John Milton's Paradise Lost, in which the figures of death and Satan are considered sublime. And the fascination with the sublime in Romanticism first began in landscaping. So I already said that all these writers, they used to have a grand tour, and in that grand tour their life was in danger many times, and there they got to know the kind of fascination towards terror, something unknown, something which is still can be beautiful, can be sensed. So the English Romantics began to view the sublime as referring to a realm of experience, an area of experience beyond the measurable, something which we cannot exactly measure, that is beyond rational thought, as I have already said, that arises chiefly from the terrors inspiring nature. I ask you to read today, reread, actually you already have read, but read Ode to West Wind from this angle. Read Mont Blanc. Many students have not read it. Mont Blanc, Montblanc. Read this poem from this angle. Okay, you will understand what I'm conveying right now. Others agreed with Kant's definition of the sublime. Students, as I said, that philosophers are the antennae, and they write something, they understand something, and then writers, the creative writers later on gets inspired by these writings, and then they create. That is why any great professor, he will be asking you again and again to read about philosophy. And I ask, if this video is watched by any of the person who is the professor and in the lawmaking place there somewhere, I would ask that stop writing the important books in the suggestive readings and start making it a part of our curriculum, our curricula throughout the universities of India, that our students start reading philosophy along with literature, so that they can understand literature in the proper manner. So why I have given this suggestion, because I'm talking about Kant, I'm talking about Burke. Without reading these writers, without at least having slight iota of idea about the writings of these writers, we cannot understand Romanticism. So others agreed with Kant's definition of the sublime. I read that it had everything to do with mankind's rational thought and perception. Means sublime means something which your common understanding based on logic, science, reason cannot understand. Your logic cannot make you feel something. It will make you question. But all romantics agreed that the sublime was something to be studied and contemplated. And in doing so, the romantics internalized their thoughts of the sublime and attempted to understand it. What I said, they internalized the idea of sublime. That is why almost everywhere, even in the poem Prelude by Wordsworth, there are many senses. I remember one episode particularly where he has stolen a boat and is rowing himself towards the other side of the river, or say I think lake, and three mountains and their peaks, they are coming closer to Wordsworth, and he feels a sense of awe, terror, and then he feels that something is there, which I can't understand, but it is hitting my soul somewhere inside. So all these romantic writers are somewhere, they are the writers of soul. You cannot understand a person without soul. You cannot be intimate with a person's pain if you are not a man of soul. So romantics internalized their thoughts of the sublime and attempted to understand it, although the romantics believed one could find enlightenment in the sublime. Each of the romantics had a slightly different interpretation on the sublime. So picturesque, I would like to come on the next aspect of romantic writing, that is picturesque. Picturesque, along with the aesthetic and cultural strands of Gothic and Celticism, was a part of the emerging romantic sensibility of the 18th century. And the word picturesque has come from, I'm reading it, the Oxford Dictionary right now, and I'm telling you the meaning. It is derived from the French word pittoresque, Pittoresque, and the Italian pittoresco. Okay, they can ask you this question in net. And Gilpin's essay on prints, there is a writer, Gilpin, published in 1768, defined picturesque as a term expressive of the peculiar kind of beauty which is agreeable in picture. Peculiar kind of beauty agreeable in picture. It means if you see it, but you cannot picturize it. If you cannot create a picture either through paint or through word, if you cannot, then it is not picturesque. Picturesque means something which can be converted into picture. This is the definition by Gilpin. The term picturesque needs to be understood in relation to the two other aesthetic ideals, that is beautiful and the sublime. By the last term of the 18th century, Enlightenment and rationalist ideas about aesthetics were being challenged by looking at the experience of beauty and sublimity as non-rational. Beauty and sublimity are non-rational. As you know, that it is said that beauty lies in the eyes of beholder. You cannot say, to me, my daughter is the most beautiful girl in the world. But to you, she might not be as beautiful as it means. Beauty, okay, and aesthetics, the ideas of aesthetics, beauty, they are quite subjective, personal. They are things which are related to soul from somewhere inside, which cannot be measured, which cannot be calculated from certain rules. Aesthetic experience was not just a rational decision. One did not look at a pleasing curved form and decide it was beautiful. Rather, it came naturally as a matter of basic human instinct. आप और हम सब क्या करते हैं, कई बार हम सबको लगता है किसी चीज को देखकर हमारे मुंह से निकलता है, we all together all of a sudden say wow, so that feeling is related to picturesque. Edmund Burke, in his work A Philosophical Inquiry into the Origin of Our Ideas of the Sublime and Beautiful, he said that the soft, gentle curves appealed to the male sexual desire, while the sublime horrors appealed to our desires for self-preservation. Now, for this, those students who are unable to understand, because through this medium of lecture online or live, it's very tough for us to understand everything until you speak something, you ask question, I answer your question. So those who want, they can demand me it on my phone 9828402032. I will send them my PPT, because why I'm taking these live classes first time in my life. Everybody is donating to Prime Minister. So I thought, like, I'm not that much rich, so why can't I help all those thousands of students, who want to clear this exam and they want some lectures. So sometimes, I'll be giving some of my material free of cost to some of those who are contacting me. I've already given you my number, and I think I'm feeling a bit hungry now. And though I have cleared almost the basic aspects of pre-romanticism, I can't say that I have cleared everything on romanticism, because I would like to read something from this book also in the next live class. So wait for my next live class. Till then, thank you very much.